First of all, I agree with Panjong Chia. I think this is not a new Cold War scenario, but there is clearly a very strong oppositional stance congealing what is against what is perceived to be a Western imposition of values and norms. And this is taking place even by democratic rising powers like India, like Brazil, like South Africa. I think what these countries have in common, including with Russia and China, is perhaps the notion of a sort of new developmental state, and these countries use a strong discourse of non-interventionism, even if in practice actually they do carry out their own types of interventionism. So I think it's important to keep in mind that even if some of the BRICS actually share some of the principles espoused, for instance, by the European Union, they do not like how they are those norms are pushed onto others as the veneer of very sort of self-interested agenda. So I think that rather than speak of a bipolarity, what we have now is a sort of breakdown of the current normative power dynamics, but without a clear alternative. And Toloraya referred to the creation of parallel structures that can act as complementary institutions. But I see it a little bit different. Elements like the BRICS Development Bank are being created out of sheer frustration that reforms within the Bretton Woods are not advancing despite the rhetorical support, including of Western countries, for change. And the risk here, and I think this is bound to happen, is that through the creation of such institutions, the BRICS will engage in norms, more norm setting. So it's not so much a bipolarity between a U.S.-Europe axis and a Russia-China, even though I think they have a lot of normative weight. But I think it's still a breakdown of the current normative power dynamics. And then finally, I think that we should not treat the BRICS here as always coherent unit within a coherent camp. I already mentioned we have some democratic rising powers that also interact via IBSA, even if that is rather weak compared to the BRICS. And there is contestation of their foreign policy within those countries. Of course, with the elections, we might see a little bit of a sea of change, not in South Africa. With India, I think it's more uncertain, and with Brazil, we're waiting to see what happens with the election. And then finally, the BRICS have a problem of representativity because they are contested not only by other rising powers, but other developing countries don't necessarily like it when the BRICS claim to speak on behalf of the developing world. And there are other countries that have also been perhaps more willing than the BRICS so far to act as bridges. So I think we have to take into account that we're really speaking about a broader field when we talk about these problems of breakdown of normative regimes and power dynamics. And then one final point, we're in a very peculiar juncture right now because Mariellen was saying the U.S. is acting more remote. It's also war-weary, and we know from history that we have these periods of 3 or 4 years when the U.S. and by extension NATO is war-weary, but this won't last forever. So I think there is, so to speak, a window of opportunity for rising powers that want to enact more influence, but this is a rapidly changing configuration, and I will not be surprised due to the internal political dynamics in the United States if in just a few years it's willing to take on a more assertive power projection again. Thank you.